The biggest news story that's sort of taken the internet by storm, or at least it did yesterday, was the fact that Sony is suing Tencent over this game, Light of Motiram. Now, Stephen Totillo has done an amazing job putting together a bunch of the screenshots from the case documents. You can actually read it for yourself. You can read all of the pages and details about this lawsuit and what they are claiming over on courtlistener.com. I have it open here. I'll read the light 48-page report sooner rather than later. But there's a lot of details we learn about this court filing in this document. Long story short, Light of Motiram, I did a reaction to this. It was announced by Tencent. It is very clearly taking inspiration from Horizon Zero Dawn, and Sony has taken legal action. Now, going back and watching my original video, it's actually really interesting because way back then, the claim was that Light of Motiram was actually going to be released on PlayStation. Obviously, that is not the case given the fact that they are now embroiled in litigation. Compare the games for yourself. Stephen Totillo says you can actually see the trailer with robot animals and the trailer with robot animals, of course, with Horizon. And you can actually see the characters side by side. So this is the Horizon franchise. This is the Light of Motiram promotional material. You can see Alloy looking all cool there. Here's Alloy looking all cool. Not Alloy, sorry. The Light of Motiram character looking all cool on the other side. Now, the one thing that I think Light of Motiram might have going for it, believe it or not, is the fact that the gameplay is so widely different. If you actually watch the gameplay, it seems more like a dungeon crawler, not dungeon crawler, Dark Souls type game. Sorry, I don't know why I said dungeon crawler, because it's more third person and like there's base building and such. So it's a little bit more like Pal World, I would say, and meets Dark Souls in terms of gameplay versus what Horizon is doing. But in terms of art aesthetic, I mean, it's very clear that they are taking some heavy inspirations from the Horizon franchise. Here's one of the robot dogs. Here's one of the robot dogs. Here's another one that looks quite similar. This is all from Sony's actual court filing. And well, I do think the gameplay is interesting. You can see like everybody at the time, myself included, was saying this wild copy of Horizon Zero Dawn is just begging for Sony to sue. Well, sure enough, that document is actually part of an official court filing now. We actually learned a few sort of interesting things about Horizon, though. So the one detail that we learned from the court filing was that Horizon has actually sold 38 million copies. You know, a lot of people have always wondered how many copies did the Horizon franchise actually sell? One, document part 61. Let's see if I can just search. Can I just search for line 61? Dot. The Horizon franchise is immensely successful and widely distributed. The Horizon franchise has sold over 38 million copies globally. There would be no question that Tencent had access to the Horizon franchise when it created Light of Motiram, even had it not expressly approached SIE with a request to license SIE's intellectual property rights in the franchise. so so they actually went to Sony and said, "Hey, we want to license Horizon." Sony said no. And then they made the game anyway. So that's what Sony is claiming in the lawsuit. That is wild. That would be like Pal World going to Nintendo and saying, "Hey, we want to license the Pokemon franchise to make this game that we're thinking of." And Nintendo says no. And then they just go ahead and make it anyway. My reaction to this, because I think Shinobi said, GameSpot is reporting that per the lawsuit, Tencent tried to license the Horizon IP, but Sony declined. And I said, no way, lol, Tencent is cooked. How in the world? I mean, honestly, that one point in the court case, that is the one that will probably do the most damage by far to Tencent because they actually approached PlayStation to license the IP. And if there's more documentation that Sony has about that, then Sony can probably get away with shutting this down. Yeah, that's really interesting because if you're approaching somebody to license their franchise, that is a major problem. So let's read this here. The Horizon franchise's vibrant cyber tribal setting and visual aesthetic has been widely recognized and uniquely distinctive. For example, IGN really liked it. The Gamer Network liked it. Strange Horizons has lauded the Horizon franchise, that it's great. And then this line is really interesting. There would be no question that Tencent had access to the Horizon franchise, even had it not expressly licensed. Let's look up the word license and see if we can actually find. Earlier this year, Sony had discussions with Tencent trying to informally resolve its concern that Light of Motiram violated its intellectual property rights. Tencent again sought to license the Horizon intellectual property. Sony again communicated clearly and unequivocally that it would not license the Horizon assets to Tencent, objected to Light of Motiram, and insisted that it be withdrawn. Tencent has since signaled that it rejected Sony's demands and would forge ahead, releasing a new promotional trailer for Light of Motiram and announcing that in the near future, Light of Motiram will also commence global testing. Tencent has continued to release additional promotional materials, suggesting the game will soon be made available for playtesting. There's footage out there of this game actually running, and people can go ahead and play it. So, yeah. So the first mention of the word license was actually here on line 5. Upon information and belief, sometime in 2023, unbeknownst to Sony, Tencent started developing a video game called Light of Motiram, which, just like Horizon, features a young redheaded female protagonist and tribal groups fighting for survival among large robotic animals in a post-apocalyptic world. In March 2024, at a gaming conference in San Francisco, California, I'm going to guess GDC, Tencent executives approached Sony with a pitch to develop its own Horizon game in collaboration with SIE. Sony rejected the idea and considered the matter closed. So at GDC 2024, they had approached Sony to make this property, and Sony basically said no. Apparently, Tencent was undeterred by SIE's refusal to license its Horizon IP. Tencent continued secretly developing Light of Motiram, eventually announcing a forthcoming game. Tencent's promotional material bore a strong similarity to SIE's own Horizon promotional material. It is so close. The tricky thing is, though, even Nintendo knows that you don't sue people for a likeness or making a game that looks like your game. However, the fact that Tencent went ahead and went to Sony and said, look, we want to license the Horizon IP to make this thing, that is the wild part. That is the smoking gun that Sony has that says they made this specifically, or at least that's what Sony's accusing. I don't want to get sued. Sony is accusing them of specifically making this game to look like Horizon and then trying to get the license to the Horizon franchise, and Sony said no. So I think Tencent is cooked. I don't know that we ever get this game out at this point. It was crazy because in my original video, one of those websites like Sports Illustrated or something like that was reporting that this game was planned for PlayStation 5. I guess it would kind of make sense if they were trying to get the license and they thought they were going to like back up a dump truck full of money to get the Horizon franchise license, but Sony just said, nah, we're good. Anyway, what a wild story. Everybody's been talking about this thing. I made a dumb tweet and made a mistake saying that it was actually revealed during the Sony State of Play. Clearly now that is definitely not the case. I swear, though, I swear to you, I thought I saw this at one of the big events, and I remembered thinking to myself, that looks a lot like Horizon, because that was the reaction literally everybody had. Anyway, let me know what you think about the story in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell to know when my content goes live. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I do greatly appreciate it. I do greatly appreciate the patrons also. Chris Reddy, Philaroni, Spingater, and Aries EMS, thank you so much. If you want to support, you can go to patreon.com/SaveStatePlus, or you can click that join button to become a YouTube member and support my independent endeavors. If you want to see my original reaction to this trailer, I'm actually going to link to that so you can actually see the trailer reveal and the Light of Motiram gameplay that they showcased, because It gameplay wise, it doesn't look a lot like Horizon, but I'll let you come to that conclusion yourself. Bye for now, everybody.